everybody. This week we've finished asana practice as of last week, and we'll be starting pranayama now. We'll be going into several weeks of pranayama and then meditation. This week I'm focusing on exercises that can be used for relaxation and removing anxiety. These are very useful as students, and in the US there's a big problem with depression and anxiety right now. So these exercises, I hope that you find them useful and actually attempt to try them from time to time if you're feeling stressed. As a yoga teacher, I know about a lot of things that can be used to relax, but it's still hard to have myself do them when I need them. So I encourage you to learn it and keep it in the back of your mind. Okay, try to remind yourself if you're stressed. Okay, I'm going to try doing these breaths, 10 breaths, or even just once. It can be very useful to take a moment and do something that can help you. So we'll be trying 3 breathing techniques: deep breathing, ujjayi breathing, and Brahmari. I made 3 separate videos this week showing you these techniques. Deep breathing is the basis for most of pranayama practices. Fully fill and fully empty the lungs. Ujjayi breathing translates to victorious breath, or some people call it ocean breathing. PowerPoint recommended this beautiful picture of a whale when I wrote the word ocean, and I liked that picture, so I put it there. Ujjayi breathing, you'll kind of hear the sound of waves. Imagine that you're hearing those sounds when you're doing this breath. You just raise your tongue and it makes that type of sound for you. Brahmari is a buzzing bee breath, and you really you use your hands to close off your head and you focus internally during this type of breathing. Helps to focus, I read today, it helps to calm anger, and helps to relax. So the way I instructed it was 4 breaths in, not 4 breaths. I'll change that out of that. Counting to 4 while you breathe in, and counting to 4 while you breathe out. So you're trying to, through this counting in your head or listening to someone count for you, you're trying to slow the breath. So you're breathing in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. And you can go slower than that if it's comfortable. It's all about listening. Again, like I always say, listening to your body, trying to fully fill and fully empty the lungs. Another way of practicing pranayama is using I mixed that up, a 1-to-2 ratio. Inhale and then exhale for double the time that it takes you to inhale, because you want to fully empty the lungs. It may take some practice to get to that point. You may start with 4 in, 4 out, and then you may start trying 4 in, 5 out, and eventually 4 in, 8 out, or 5 in, 10 out. And of course, the numbers can change based on the pace that you're counting. But a general guideline, in some of the clinical research that we've done, and I posted the publications that I have written based on our yoga research. We did a study a couple years ago on Shitali and Shikari, which are 2 breathing techniques used for hypertension. We'll be learning those later this semester. But slowing the breath during this technique to 6 breaths per minute, that would be counting, if you're using a metronome set to 60 beats per minute, like the second hand on a clock, you'd be inhaling for 5 seconds, exhaling for 5 seconds, and that will make 6 breaths per minute. We found that lowering the breath to about that rate has an impact on heart rate variability, and that can be indicative of a parasympathetic nervous system response. So it shows relaxation happening. So essentially, slowing the breath is relaxing. It induces this rest and digest type of mode, and we can measure that physiologically. So it's not in our imagination that these breathing exercises can help us relax. It is clinically proven. So it's worth practicing. And I'll just add that I might have said this before too, but when I was in India, it was a stark difference from the US. In the US, I have found when I ask people if they practice yoga, they have tried asanas, they've tried the postures, but they haven't tried many other aspects of yoga, including breathing techniques. They may have done a little bit, but not a lot. Whereas in India, I would find if someone says, "Oh, you do yoga?" I have done a lot of pranayama, but I haven't tried those yoga poses yet. So it's very common actually in India for people to have a regular pranayama practice, like a lengthy daily pranayama practice. I found that very interesting, and I think that's less common in the US. So a lot of people use these techniques, that's my point, and have found them to benefit their health. Do's and don'ts. Do fill and empty the lungs completely and pay attention to your breath. Move at the pace that's comfortable for you. Feel your abdomen expanding as you inhale and contracting as you completely exhale. So don't rush your breath or move the breath too uncomfortably slowly. If my counting in the video is uncomfortable for you, just take the instruction and then practice on your own at a comfortable pace. You can count internally, or you can just focus on slowly inhaling and exhaling. And on the topic of the abdomen expanding and contracting, that is to encourage diaphragmatic breathing, where you breathe down to the bottom of your lungs. You want to avoid like chest breathing, where you're stuck here. That's not using much of your lung capacity, and it's not encouraging increasing the amount of the lungs that you're using, which is one goal of pranayama practice. So focusing on like abdomen moving, that as a result encourages you to fully draw air into the bottom of your lungs and fill your lungs, as compared to just like this shallow breathing that we often do, especially when you're anxious. You may just be like shallow chest breathing. We want to encourage full abdominal, full diaphragmatic breathing. You want to feel your abdomen moving. Tip on ujjayi breathing. That's where we're lifting our tongue. We're making like an ocean sound. Don't contract the throat too much. You don't want it to be like a stressed pose. It should be relaxing. You're just like trying to create this ocean sound as you breathe. Benefits. So our slow and complete breathing helps us to increase the amount of the lungs that we're using, therefore increasing the efficiency of our breath. So there's this whole diagram in one of my yoga books that shows on average a person only uses like, I think it's 1/10 of their lung capacity when they're breathing. So this shallow breathing is very common for people, especially when they're stressed. And when we practice pranayama, we are intentionally using all of the lungs. We're filling the full capacity of the lungs and then fully emptying it. So we are providing fresh oxygen to all of the lung tissue and then removing all of the stale air as we exhale. And that's very beneficial, because when we're only using a little bit of our lungs, we're just giving a little oxygen, letting a little bit of that carbon dioxide out, and there's a lot of stale air left in there. So the more we practice pranayama, the more we can teach our body this breathing technique that is more efficient, that gives you more oxygen and removes more carbon dioxide with each breath cycle. So it can eventually slow your habitual breathing, and it can eventually lead to just a more relaxed parasympathetic state and a healthier body, such as, some of these techniques have been shown to decrease hypertension, for example, like the Shitali Shikari, which we'll be learning later on. Also, when we're practicing breathing, we're focusing the mind. And of course, just these deep breathing, as I said, you're in the moment, you're increasing oxygenation to the blood and the brain. The biggest benefit is with continued practice. You're training an unconscious act that you do all the time. You're training it to be more efficient. So you're training your body to function more efficiently and to breathe more fully. That can have a lot of benefits. Contraindications for ujjayi breathing. You would want to avoid this if you have very low blood pressure. And for Brahmari, the buzzing bee breath, avoid it if you have a severe ear infection, because there's a lot of vibration going on in the head. And you may want to check out this link, that yoga point where I had studied. They go into detail on many different pranayama practices. Okay, so you'll see the videos posted, and I look forward to seeing your questions and your comments.